do parents really know?
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
This thing called the parent information gap is our subject matter tonight. It seems that there's quite an apparency that parents have one notion about how a school system or their own school is doing, meaning their kids' school, but actually it's the reverse. They think they know what their kids are doing, but they don't know what the school is doing. And so how do you make a comparison as to what the educational excellence environment is if you don't know all that data? I don't know. It gets kind of semi-complicated, but the Lieutenant Governor is here to talk about it. He's getting some traction in op-ed spaces throughout the state to try to start a conversation here about creating a law that allows parents to have more access to academic information, which seems to make a lot of sense, right, with all this right-cast focus that we have. We'll get into that momentarily. Glad to have you in very much, Wabbit. Well, yesterday morning was not your average Sunday, right? The president made his announcement. Of course, he had a tweet that there's something big coming, because that's what he does. Here's the network's report.
He didn't die a hero, he died a coward. Crying, whimpering, screaming.
President Trump announced the death of ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi from the White House Sunday and said he watched the raid play out in real time.
We watched it so clearly. We had absolutely perfect, as though you were watching a movie.
Now the president says he may release video showing some of the last moments of al-Baghdadi's life.
Am I considering releasing video footage of the raid? And we may take certain parts of it and release it, yes.
Al-Baghdadi's death is a national security win for President Trump, who has faced bipartisan criticism for withdrawing U.S. troops from Syria, enabling the escape of some ISIS prisoners. But American soldiers were seen crossing back into Syria from Iraq this weekend, and President Trump confirmed their mission.
We're out, but we are leaving soldiers to secure the oil.
The president is also defending his decision not to notify congressional leaders about the al-Baghdadi mission ahead of time, slamming Democrats conducting the impeachment inquiry.
I think Adam Schiff is the biggest leaker in Washington. You know that, I know that, we all know that. I've watched Adam Schiff leak. He's a corrupt politician.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says he found out about the mission when the rest of the world did.
Look, it's great that we've gotten al-Baghdadi and killed him. He's a dangerous man, an evil man. The fight against ISIS has to continue.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi called al-Baghdadi's death significant, but added the House must be briefed on this raid, which the Russians, but not top congressional leadership, were notified of in advance.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to bother the American people more, that the House and Senate leadership weren't advised of this, in real time, or just the indignity that the president showed yesterday morning in explaining this entire thing. You know, his remarks that were prepared were caustic enough, but in Trumpian style, no doubt. He couldn't just leave. He had to do another half an hour's Q&A in which he just snatched the dignity of this raid right from underneath it. Not suggesting that the Special Forces heroes that we have in America aren't at the top of their game. He leaves us in this predicament where we have to say, well, all due credit to the special, of course. And by the way, the military operation here was ongoing for years, not weeks. Years. And the idea that he was every day just saying, get me Baghdadi, and the notion that Baghdadi is a bigger get than Obama and Osama bin Laden. First of all, that's like saying, well, you know what, the Super Bowl championship in 2008 was much more important than the Super Bowl championship in 2011. What is the relevance and importance and the need for that conversation at all, other than to rub your own tummy? I don't know whether America is checked into how disgraceful the president is in the middle of opportunities to be incredibly dignified. He got a little of his own medicine at the ball game last night, which also isn't right. Didn't your parents grow you up to say two wrongs don't make a right? But the wrongs just keep multiplying. Look, at the end of the day, cliche phrase, right? this raid obviously is a major league military success, but how we play it and how we spin it has everything to do with the next one and the next one and the next one. The post game. Let's talk about scores and parents knowing what's going on. And here's a headline that I think is kind of interesting. RICAS results were out, and the commissioner says it's a truth-telling moment. Let me lay the foundation here for the data if you didn't see it, and then we'll talk to the Lieutenant Governor about what he thinks parents ought to know about this.
The RICAS results were up from last year, but still showed only a minority of students in Rhode Island are meeting expectations in math and English language arts.
That means that 38% of the kids can read on grade level. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't be, raising any victory flags about that.
Urban districts continue to have the lowest proficiency rates. In Central Falls, just 8% of students are meeting expectations in math, and 13% are meeting expectations in ELA. Woonsocket and Providence fare better, but still well below the average. The state is slated to take over Providence schools next Friday, led by Education Commissioner Angelica Infante Green.
The places that are struggling the most have been struggling historically. So what we do in Providence, and Providence is our capital city and where the majority of the kids are, will benefit Central Falls. We will have a Central Falls strategy that we'll be ready to announce sometime in the next few months.
Infante Green is using the Crowley Act to intervene in Providence schools. We asked her if she would do the same in Central Falls.
We'll see. We'll see.
By the way, on that, Lieutenant Governor, welcome. We're going to get to this information gap conversation, but give me your take on the entire RICAS performance, and then let's dig into Central Falls a little bit, because you've been the first one publicly to suggest the state ought to get out of Central Falls.
Certainly changed the governance model. I was happy to hear the commissioner mention Central Falls in the way she did last week.
Why?
Because they failed. And I've been on record, like you say, that if it's not working, and you just saw 8% proficiency in math in Central Falls, we know the kids can do a lot better, and you should change the governance model, whether they give it back to the city under the right conditions, or insert new leadership there under the right conditions, and you'll get different results. We know that because when you saw the scores there, Dan, right? And I've mentioned this, the fact that I'm directly involved on the math scores with the 2nd, the 6th, the 8th, and the 12th performing school districts in the state. 3 of them are Mayoral Academies. The other one is our hometown, the town of Cumberland. And the 3 Mayoral Academies draw from the 47th, 48th, and 49th, 50th placements in the state in terms of reading and math scores. Yet we have done a lot better than that in the Mayoral Academies. And in Central Falls in particular, Blackstone Valley Prep has 400, 500, 600 kids from Central Falls, the same communities that are doing 8%, and their grades are 20, 30 points higher. So we got a long way to go, but we know that we can do a lot better than is happening right now in Central Falls.
So we'll get into the charters and the differences between charters and the information gap that you're starting to get some traction on. But tell me specifically what your idea is of Central Falls governance models going forward. You were suggesting the state get out. The state's takeover, for lack of a better term, of Central Falls years ago does not resemble the one that the commissioner is engaging in Providence.
No, it doesn't. And Central Falls was the 2nd school district in the country that actually asked the state to take them over. The state didn't actually come in.
It's mostly
and
a financial takeover.
That's correct. And so at that time, it's different. It was Central Falls was asking for the financial relief. It was primarily a financial problem in the early 90s, where right now the intervention in Providence is an academic outcome problem that the city of Providence and their leadership have not been able to figure out. So they're the commissioner is inserting herself into that. And it sounds as though that she's thinking the same way in Central Falls, which gives her a little bit more authority to do some things that you need to do as they've done in Lawrence.
But it sounds like, at least if you're not digging in past the headline or the soundbite, it sounds like it's opposite of what you were asking for earlier, which is to get the state out of Central Falls. So explain specifically what getting out of Central Falls from the current model is, and what you'd like to see the commissioner perhaps do in Central Falls.
Well, I think if the commissioner inserts herself in Central Falls in a way that creates a new academic financial model, then I think that, and she is able to do that, then in essence she would be doing what I suggested a while back. I still believe that there's value in the district going back to the city in terms of the governance model and setting up in a way that the academic and the finances can work. So all I'm saying is that you need a change. And I'm clearly in favor of, when things are not working, go in there and aggressively change the game.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, so she knows in her mind, again, her insertion into Providence, she has a direct path that she's going to go on, and she's going to talk about the things that she feels as though needs to be done in that community. We have not had that in a commissioner until she's actually inserted herself in Providence. So if she decides to insert herself in Central Falls, we're so, you know, the Central Falls student and the families and the community is going to be so far better off. And I would hope that they would include the city in that governance change, because they have the flexibility right now to do what I've suggested, which is to get the state out and get the city in charge.
All right. We'll talk about the nature of the charters and their performances when we come back, and then we'll talk about the parent information gap. Stay with us. So this is quite the headline, the Woonsocket Call. Rise above. City charter school is tops in Rhode Island. The Rise Academy is a Mayoral Academy.
It's a Mayoral Academy, just like Blackstone Valley Prep, Achievement First, and now that's
Blackstone Valley Prep. So we should diagram this. Rise is in Woonsocket and draws from
Woonsocket, Burrillville, North Smithfield, primarily Woonsocket students right now.
Okay. Blackstone Valley Prep is
Cumberland,
in
Lincoln.
Cumberland, Lincoln, Central Falls.
Yeah. And a good percentage from each community are at that school.
And Achievement First is in Providence and draws from Providence mainly, Cranston,
Warwick.
Warwick.
North Providence.
Those are the three Mayoral Academies that we have in the state.
3 Mayoral Academies, and they've shown to do very well, and especially in communities like you just mentioned, Woonsocket, Providence, right?
They are charter schools. They are public charter schools, which means that they still run on the taxpayer dollar, but they're public schools, but they have a different governance model. And the Mayoral Academies began in what year?
We opened up, the state legislation was passed in 2008, and Blackstone Valley Prep opened up in 2009.
And we celebrated their first high school graduation class here last year, 2 years ago now.
2 years ago, yeah.
You and a couple of other gutsy leaders decided that this is something that needed to be done. It wasn't easy to sell. You're now starting to see the benefits reaped at all 3 charters, and you make a point to distinguish between Mayoral Academy charters and other long-time established public charters, which don't seem to be able to get some traction here. What is the difference, and why do you think it's important for people to know?
Well, it's difficult to say what the difference is. I think on your show last week, you talked about the radio show, you talked about the culture that you were trying to put your finger on, and it's so there is a culture of success that they've been able to bring in. They collaborate with one another, all the Mayoral Academies do, and they deliver a similar type of culture with the involvement with the parents and that type of thing. Nothing that any other school couldn't do. But you know, there is a status quo protection in some ways. The schools, whether they're charter schools that work under contracts from the local communities, whatever it might be. Look, there's schools in the charter schools that are at 13-14% proficiency in math and reading as well.
Folks, I would recommend that you go to the websites for these 3 schools: the Rise School in Woonsocket, the Blackstone Valley Prep in Cumberland, and the Achievement First in Providence. Take a look. Still, though, the websites don't show what I think needs to be shown, and that is the dynamics of that which I got to see on a visit with you a couple of months ago. We did talk about it on the radio the other day. I can't even describe, and have not yet been able to, because I need educational expertise to advise me to describe what it is that I saw. And I know that feels a little weird for people to hear, but there is a dynamic of teaching which is something like I've never seen before. It is completely engaging. Students really don't have the chance to daydream. They are not disciplined necessarily. They are encouraged, motivated, captured, chased in terms of their awareness by team teachers, one of whom has their eye on the class while the other is instructing. it's a full court press. I'm thinking the teachers must be exhausted at the end of each day because it seems like they are hockey players leaving it all on the ice. And I just think that if mainstream public school teachers, many of whom are outstanding as well, could take notes or get the program or the secret sauce to this teaching, that everything would increase. But I don't think there's been enough exposure to the mystery of the work in the classroom. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, wherever there's success, we should be looking at, and that's my point in terms of taking a look at schools, right? Don't think that just because you got into a charter that you hit the lottery. Don't think that because you're attending a public school that you didn't hit the lottery. Let's just, or a Mayoral Academy, you hit the lottery or not. Currently, you probably have hit the lottery if you're at a Mayoral Academy, but things change and we got to stay focused on the schools doing well. We got to start talking about good schools, Dan. That's the point that I would make. I think inside the classroom, what you saw, there's a really high level of energy from both the teachers and the student. There's a high level of success type of expectation that's there. And as you mentioned, there is a consistent
it's not
factor.
well enough exposed.
There's a consistent factor from one classroom to the other,
right.
But that's because of great leadership in the school, right? Great management in the school.
Or training, or for lack of a better
that.
term, I don't mean this disrespectfully, but almost like a teacher indoctrination. The pedagogy of this whole process is extremely unique, and maybe it may not be necessarily repeatable in every environment, but I'll tell you, I just think that there's got to be more exposure to this idea. You've suggested to me that they're willing to expose and share, but the status quo educational community doesn't seem to want to engage.
Yeah, and you're going to get the continual pushback from the people who are invested in that in the current model. That they're going to try to protect that area. They're going to to segue into what I want to talk about is what parents know. The parents know what the schools allow them to know, right? So in terms of the outcomes.
Well, we should talk about that, okay? Because that is the thrust. Let's go to a break. We'll come right back. You should know about that. Stay with us. All right. Close the parent information gap. Explain it.
So a parent information gap is the difference between what the parents believe their students are doing in the class, achieving in the classroom, and what the kids are actually achieving.
My kids are getting A's, B's, and C's. I think they're doing okay.
They're doing okay, but that's a metric, that's a local metric that's based on many items in terms of effort, in terms of conduct, in terms of participation, and the grades. So what happens is that we're seeing grades that come home that are good, and so why would parents change their behavior if they think their child is doing really well, right? And what would the incentive be for the schools to actually communicate to the parents that maybe we need to do a lot better if they have satisfied customers, even though it's not a real good product? So what we need to do is create a way that we mandate or require that you as a parent receive, and I believe it should be in a public setting, just like I did when I was a mayor. I ran multiple public sessions on education in the town of Cumberland, and when I informed parents that we had 2 failed elementary schools in our town, a middle school in big trouble, a high school in total disrepair, they started to see something that they weren't seeing communicated from the school district. When they did, they got a lot more engaged. The 6th ranking math score in the state of Rhode Island, the RACAS scores, is the town of Cumberland, which is not an accident. It's not an accident. It was intentional hard work by the schools, but also hard work by the municipal side of government working to communicate with the families.
Well, there's 2 conversations here. The municipal side of government is starting to creep into the educational program, and I think that's probably a good thing. But if I understand what you're saying is, parents get fooled by report cards.
Yeah, when they compare the national studies,
because their schools are underperforming.
That's correct. And when the stats, 36% of the families who actually compare the student's report card with the school report card outcomes change their opinion about the schools. And that's what we need to do. Parents should know whether their kids are attending schools that are really doing well or not doing well. And we have schools in Rhode Island that meet both those standards, right? So what we're not doing is communicating to the parents. The parents don't know.
So what do you want to do?
I want to have a public meeting every year at least once a year.
For every school.
For every school, each individual school, working with their individual parents, and every parent needs to sign off that they've received a comparative data between what's going home and the proficiency rates in the schools. Also comparison, direct comparison, because interesting things could be done, direct comparison between their physical school and a similar school in Massachusetts, where that stands. Let's get the comparative data out. Let be the goal to have the most informed
You want
parents in the
legislation
country.
that demands this?
I think the legislation, or it could be a regulation out of RIDE, one of the two. But I think that people are starting to talk about this.
The commissioner seems to think it's a good idea.
I think, I think that she's very aggressive on these things in a way that really is good, aggressive. So, what I'm saying is, let's inform every parent, let them see it, let them sign off. They got the data. If the parents
Who's
don't show
arguing against this?
The people who will argue against it will be the people of what data you want to give to the parents. Right? Most people, who's going to be against informing parents? But it's a matter of what information you give. In Cumberland, when we had 2 failed elementary schools, and this is real, we informed the parents by letter, only the parents in those schools. We didn't tell anybody else in the town. Nobody else knew. So it depends on if you're going to spoon feed parents information that basically gives them the impression.
So you wrote them an
that
exclusive letter, is what you're saying?
they wrote an exclusive. I didn't. The school department did.
Right.
But I never got the letter as a mayor. I never knew that we did it
Oh,
until.
and you're saying that's not a good thing?
That's a real bad thing.
Gotcha.
The community should know where, not the total community should know where we are, but every parent should know where every school is too. So if you required it, and then the parents that don't show up, let's figure out an electronic process. You know, we're all into apps now. Figure out an electronic process so they can sign off. And the parents who don't respond to that, pay them a visit at the house. Say, look, we're required to give you this, Mr. York. This is where we are in our schools. This is the type of things that we're doing. These are the type of things you can benefit your kids from. This is the things that you can do. This is the things that we're doing. But if you did it across the board in every community in the state of Rhode Island, it would be a game changer. And I'm talking about paradigm.
So what is your, rather than just chatting about this, what is your 2020 initiative here? Are you trying to get legislation passed, or do you want the commissioner just to embark on a policy?
I think right now we're building on
Probably
support
easier
for
to
the
get
idea.
the commissioner to embark on a policy.
It could be. But we're building support for it right now. That's why we had the op-ed in. We're going to be having meetings. We're meeting with municipal leaders around the state of Rhode Island right now, informing them as well.
You want the town side, not the school side, but the town government side in each community to get more involved, like Cumberland was with an Office of Children Learning and whatever.
Yeah, I think that if I opened up an office for learning that's a year-round office on math, reading, science,
outside
music,
of the jurisdiction.
right, and it helps support what happens in the schools. And a piece of our success in Cumberland is the fact that we've been at this for 13 years. So if we had municipalities that actually had a paradigm shift, that's what I'm calling for, a paradigm shift, which look at things different, deliver the product differently, get municipal leaders involved in education, as well as supporting the district schools and the mayoral academies and the charter schools in a way that really makes sense. That paradigm shift is an important piece.
Parents, you can ask for this, and the commissioner needs to respond to it. We'll check in with them when we can.
Yeah.
Governor, thank you.
Yep.
Final word, and we come back. You know, for parents who pay attention to what their kids are doing, you might be thinking, well, I'm already paying attention. Yeah, but sometimes if you're paying attention to the environment that you're limited to be in, meaning you're only getting data from really what the school says about your child, not what the state or the national testing community says about your child and your schools, it's a different story, right? We'll see if this idea gets traction. Seems like it should. You have a great night. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you on the radio tomorrow at 3 on WPRO and back here tomorrow night. Good night.